30 seconds and counting.
Aye.
I'm Loren. Welcome to my astrology channel, Venusian Waters. And I am here to talk about all things astrology, of course, from a spiritual law-based perspective that very much takes into account traditional Western astrology, dabbling in Hellenistic and also Jointish astrology. And I want to talk more about this full moon, July 10th, 2025. That is the exact date that the full moon culminates in the sign of Capricorn at 18 degrees. And so if you have any cardinal placement that is Libra, Aries, Capricorn, or cardinal at 18 degrees, this full moon is going to significantly impact you. Okay. Along, of course, where you have these cardinal placements within 5 degrees of 18 degrees Capricorn. And also, as I mentioned, Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, is in the sign of Aries, which means that what it's doing matters. And Saturn being in Aries means that Mars matters because Mars is the ruler of Aries. And Mars is now in the sign of Virgo on the south node of the moon. So that means what is happening in the Virgo area of your chart is cutting and slicing and severing and initiating action to release something under this full moon that very much is in harmony and significant to what's culminating in this Capricorn part of your chart that will have significance for the new moon to come, particularly as it relates to the Saturn part of your chart or Saturn parts of your chart. So where it's transiting in Aries, also where it rules Capricorn and Aries. Exciting. So, as you can see here, I have Canada's natal chart. And so you can see that, let me just annotate. Annotation, baby. Perfect. You can see that Canada has an Aries ascendant. And so the full moon is actually happening in their 10th house of worldly affairs, their public status. This is also their career. This is their reputation house. This is how they stand in the world, okay, on an international stage. And so they're having an ending here related to their identity because Saturn now is in the sign of Aries, as I mentioned, right? And as Virgo, oh, look at that. Their chart ruler is Mars, which also is in Virgo. So they literally are, they are having, they are having their nodal reversal, their Mars return, and Mars on that south node means something is ending that directly connects to their identity X'd out. And so it will shift significantly their place in the world. Okay. And so we've kind of heard this already with Canada's separation from the States in terms of a relationship that was very fundamental to Canada's becoming a sovereign. Okay. And so in this way, Canada don't know itself without American sovereignty in a particular kind of way in terms of global trade, economic significance, or economic salience, right? And so this is pretty interesting. However, there is some sweetness as Venus, you know, not huge for Canada as its chart ruler again is Mars over here, but Venus is now in the sign of Gemini with Uranus. And so Canada's having a Venus return with Uranus. So there are some things shaking up in partnership as Venus rules Canada's 7th house in addition to its 2nd house. And so there are some potentialities for gain for Canada. However, it's going to come unexpectedly, hence Uranus in this 3rd house space. Again, with neighbors, maybe the States, maybe there's some like thing that happens that give some way or some economic sweetness. Again, it may not be enough to stop the huge culmination that's happening in that 10th house space. Okay, so that's Canada. Good luck, Canada. Good luck to my Canadians. And next, we have, of course, the States. So let me just get this annotation gone so we can move over to the next one. Okay, so the US. Oh my gosh, this is not the US chart. This is a US chart. Oh my God, come on. How did I do the US? Oh, I didn't do the US. Let me just stop this. That's hilarious. I didn't do the US. That's just the annotation. So let me just go to my annotation. Let it know that I had to clear it all. Clear it all. There. Perfect. Okay. I was gonna freak out. I was like, what is going on? Okay, so the US has a Sagittarius rising. They're having culmination in their second house of earned resource, right? So I'm not sure if that's going so well for Donald Trump. It's like a lot of the policy that he's been making is to have more economic prosperity in America, some more manufacturing happening in America. But there's an ending here. That could actually be an ending in the way things have been. That's setting the stage for maybe the new vision that Donald Trump has, or the new vision that unfolds, and we're all kind of, watching as folks all around the world watch the great America transform. And so we can see that Mars is in the 10th house of the United States. And this means that there's something being cut out that is definitively in their ninth house of their Dharma. This is a house also of legal affairs. This is a house also of higher learning, of publishing, as I mentioned, Dharma, purpose, and an ethic of how we as people should exist together, hence law. Okay. And we see that Neptune's there. So something is always dissolving in that ninth space. And again, because Mars rules the United States' IC, in addition to its 11th, 12th house, we're going to put 12th house cusp. It means that there's something ending also with foreigners, because the 12th house is usually people who are not born, perhaps in America, but far away. So something with foreigners, foreign investment, in addition to its connection to home, is being severed with a certain finality. And I think that's very obvious in terms of all of the ICE raids that are happening across the US, and all of the policing of folks who are foreign nationals, immigrants being removed from the US in very large numbers, in the way in which we're seeing that ripple effect across the world. So now we're seeing countries where folks are being deported back home to are now also expelling those that they see as foreigners in their home countries to make it more affordable, as now they have to rebuild. And so, of course, because the US is a Sagittarius ascendant, and so we have Sag on the first house cusp, it means that Jupiter moving through its eighth whole sign house is more significant than ever. And we're also seeing that the US is it's a Jupiter return, in addition to the sun being in the sign of Cancer. And so this is very supported under this full moon, because what is happening, what's ending in that second house space, is supporting greater expansion in the eighth house space. So what they receive from others without having to necessarily work and earn it. Okay. And so Saturn in the fourth house space, ruling this full moon, again, very much loudly screams the expulsion of people who are not considered to belong in the States, being removed. Because Saturn, foremost, is about creating boundaries between the archetype of the sign. So Aries is all about I am, me, 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 me. So who is not me or with me is the other. And so we're seeing that expulsion, even though the US midheaven is a place of peace, right? But if we know anything about peace, we know that when it comes to nation states, peace is often fought for, right? With tools such as war and a lot of violence in the name of peace. And of course, they have Saturn in Libra, where it's exalted. So this means that there is a deep sense of justice or ideologies around civility that inform the US's public image and how it sees itself. That is also very much informing that second house space that is culminating, ending, cleaning up, finishing out, clearing up in the US's second house of values, the income it earns, also how it understands its worth, and therefore how it magnetizes through hard work what it feels is worthy, what has status, what has authority. Okay. And this is very interesting, because it's almost like it is very much like a deep reckoning in the States that is prioritizing its sense of worthiness in a way that, to me, echoes authoritarian regimes in the past. right? There's an ideal here that is being culminated through, nationalism, the type of fascism, even though in the mind of the body politic, it's anything but that, right? And of course, that clearing out in terms of the Mars energy is really cutting through and releasing ideas around service and who's being served versus who should be served. Hence, again, it's very much in conversation with Saturn, and their Saturn is in Libra, so that's about fairness, while Saturn now opposing their natal Saturn is in the fourth house of home, right? This is a place that must be I-centered, me-centered, and that a lot of times is not foreign to war and to violence, right? And so even though in the world it may come across as being fair or I want to say diplomatic, even though that's not necessarily the ideology that many people in the world, in other countries will think of the US, but it comes across as being, I would say, balanced, civil, glamorous even, or like Libran traits. That's about being composed. It's about seemingly being fair. But if you understand Libran energy, fairness doesn't actually mean fair in principle, but more so you don't have more than me, right? And so if you have more than me, I'm going to have to level the playing field by any means necessary. And so when we think about nation states, that very much echoes the recent war where there was a suspected nuclear weapons and our capacity to create nuclear weapons that would even the playing field of who has nuclear weapons, right? Even though like we think about the actual impact of that, it means more ways for everybody to hold work time, just never. However, it's my intention to say that the US as this Libra archetype with Saturn there, right? Heavy-handed boundary through this ideal of fairness of civility, which implies that someone has to be better than the other, even though the idea is that that impartial person is then able to tell everyone else what to do. Even though, like, who checks them? We don't know. But that's not the point here. The point is that this place is very much activated under this full moon as to why this culmination is happening and what is the vision for it that very much connects to this 10th house, 4th house acts in the States. That's very much cleaning up home to re-emerge in terms of its place in the outer world as a powerhouse that very much is Saturnian rule. Okay, so there's some integration happening by a lot of internal breakdown. So now for the all signs portion, we're going to start with Aries, but let me like clean up my annotation one time. Not me, my annotation. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so Aries, the full moon is culminating for you in your 10th house of your worldly affairs, of your career, of your status, of your reputation, and who the world essentially calls you to be. And so you've had Saturn now in your first house, really maturing you, asking you to be more boundaried, more responsible, perhaps bearing a heavier weight on who you say you are and tasking you to really show up as that. And there's Neptune there right beside Saturn, supporting you to dissolve what no longer serves you. And some of that may be surprising to you because, Neptune is very foggy and it doesn't just work like a wand where you tell it what to do and it does it. No, sometimes it's dissolving parts of us that we don't have a problem with, but nevertheless, we're being forced to have to let it go, despite whatever efforts we put to, for example, solidifying that part of our identity or that part of our lives. And so there's a lot of momentum to build a step forward with greater authenticity, greater authority, while also having to simultaneously deal with the dissolving, having to release things that we have thought we needed or we wanted. That very much can create a very painful dynamic. And so how that is very much culminating is showing you your 10th house space what the career place is and or how those changes are reflecting in the world around you, particularly as it relates to your reputation, as it relates to your social status and your career. Another thing is you are Mars ruled, as Mars rules Aries, and Mars is in your sixth house where it is in its joy. The sixth house is about work, health, routine, taking care of small animals, also tending to crisis, tending to sickness. And so in the sixth house, Mars gets to cut away all the things that do not serve your day-to-day life. And on the south node of the moon, it suggests that what is being severed with precision, because Virgo is a sign of precision, of analysis, of scheming, of seeing things in its parts and what doesn't work. So what parts need to be removed and or reimagined to fit and create a more seamless machine. And so Mars is now utilizing this precision, listening to Mercury now in the sign of Leo, hence where you have your heart centered, where you have your sense of self-expression, to cut out what does not support that creativity, what comes from you authentically expressing yourself to last. And so what is being cut out, however, is being cut out for good. And it's interesting because your self-expression now is very much informed by where Saturn is bearing down on who you say you are and who you're showing up to be, right? In all levels of you. So mind, body, heart, right? And that heart now is expressing it because you know what? Mercury in Leo is making a nice trine to your Saturn, to your first house, Aries, to your Neptune, and also where you've also done a lot of self-care or self-healing work with Chiron having been hanging out there for the last several years. And so again, Mars is cutting out in that sixth house. It's very much trining this full moon and allowing you to really, know that what goes is in fact serving you and opening your container to hold much more space and dynamism that is lasting in the world for years to come. That is what I have for you, Aries. Sending you much love and good luck. Taurus, so this full moon is culminating in your ninth house space of higher learning, of publishing, of your dharma, your sense of purpose, also perhaps your travels abroad. Maybe you are finally booking that trip to come back home if you have been gone for a while now. This is a place where you're also having to move through heavy ideas that may be very structured, very boundaried inherently, that now may be coming to an end, And with Saturn in Aries, conjuncting Neptune in your 12th house space, this can look like beliefs that have lived in your unconscious weighing heavily on you and having to address them. And addressing them is creating some space for you to finally actually release them in that ninth house area where you now have the full moon culminating. Also, Taurus, you are Venus ruled, and Venus is now in Gemini with Uranus. Congratulations, you have stepped out and you have arrived. Okay, you are now authentically you. And so with Venus conjunct Uranus, you're able to see the way that this mutable energy is supporting you to focus on these ideas, more ideas, space for ideas that before you didn't have the container to hold. There was resistance. There was this heavy, fixed, structured energy that you couldn't necessarily unwind yourself from because one, you are fixed, it was you, and then also it was supported by, the idea, the sense of purpose, the ideologies, the beliefs that you have had and that perhaps have also characterized your travels abroad and also your avenues and pathways and portals of how you have communicated or navigated or, been in higher learning institution. Also how you thought about the law being very structured. There's an authority, and that's it in ways in which did not allow for different ways to imagine authority and also power. And so now you're stepping into an era where you are expanding to think of yourself way more than ever before. And you have the bandwidth for it where you didn't have it before, as I mentioned. As well, Mercury is in Leo in your fourth house, and this is also expanding ideas about the family, also about home, also about heart, that very much is significant to this full moon, as what's changing that ninth house space allows for an expansion of heart in that fourth house that is supported by the work you're doing when you're by yourself, that you're doing psychologically, that you're doing whether through your spiritual practice. That Saturn is very much saying we have to ground to release the heaviness and allow for more childlike innocence in how we step forward to allow ourselves to be more than perhaps we were imagining before. That's what happened, you Taurus. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. Gemini, so this full moon is culminating for you in your eighth house space where you have shared resources with other people. This is where you receive perhaps money that you do not work for, or you do not earn, but that comes to you as a result of the people that you are deeply merged and connected to, okay? And so the moon rules your second house, Gemini, of resources, of the things you put into your mouth. And of course, the moon is how you feel safe. It's about your survival needs, Gemini, because moon rules the second house, which is about how you survive. It also demonstrates how you understand yourself, your self-worth, to magnetize the things that you need, again, to survive. And so Jupiter here is expanding this container of your second house. And with the full moon culminating in the eighth, perhaps there's an ending in some resources or some financial support that you were receiving from others. Maybe you were receiving some government benefits that now are coming to an end. Okay. Maybe there was payouts or alimonies that, again, are concluding. And so allowing you to step more fully into this expansion era where you're getting to make more, also understand that you're worth more. And so you're seeing a glow up in your ability to earn more income, right? And therefore to, I say, expand your self-concept of self to move from survival to perhaps more thriving. As Jupiter loves to be in Cancer, where it is exalted. As well, Aries, Saturn is the ruler of this full moon and is in your 11th house of your friends, your social networks, your groups of belonging. This is also where you have your hobbies and your long-term hopes and dreams and wishes. You've had Chiron here, showing you some woundedness in the communities you belong to. So maybe you've been out here doing a lot of protesting, really deeply involved in the different groups that have been experiencing plights of oppression for numerous different reasons, because perhaps they're considered to not be the right skin color, the right gender expression, a myriad of things. And so now you're being called to get more serious about the groups that you are calling yourself, that you are belonging to, the groups that you're identifying with here on out, right? And this very much is connected to who shows up for you as well, right? As it's really important in that eighth house space that's culminating. You've had some really tough lessons about how you have known yourselves through perhaps not intentional ways, but ways that have been inherited through perhaps your family and or just where you grew up, right? As Saturn rules your eighth in addition to your ninth house, right? So maybe you have a lineage of people in your family that are very Saturnian, that don't come from the place that you live now, perhaps that they were born. So perhaps you belong to families of immigrants. And so there's a Saturnian element to your legacy that you've inherited that comes to your beliefs in addition to what you've inherited energetically. And so this is being transformed obviously through Pluto in that ninth house space now, but also it's culminating for that spark now that's going to be taken further with Pluto's 20-year transit through your ninth house. Also, Saturn and Aries doing the work in your 11th house to get more serious about the groups that you are choosing to belong to with greater intention, where you're now being asked to have more authority, more responsibility, more intention making about how that corresponds to your identity, who you are in terms of your sacred I am. That very much is asking you to do the hard work to reach your dreams, right? And then the work to identify your group dynamics and how you're being called to be in greater integrity in those dynamics. What is your role in that work? And of course, Saturn in Aries is ruled by or deposited by Mars. And Mars is in Virgo on the South Node in your fourth house. So something about your family dynamic, as I've been mentioning, family's been coming up, ancestry, is being removed, it's being uprooted in ways that no longer serve where you're going in terms of this new dharma and sense of purpose in the world. That very much is being culminated in the soul contracts with Capricorn closing out those contracts in the eighth house space where they have existed energetically, if not materially, in terms of the exchange of where energy flows to, whether in resources, emotional, material, etc. Okay, that is what I have for you, Gemini. Sending you so much love and good luck. Cancer. So this full moon is culminating in your seventh house of partners, one-to-one interactions, dynamics. This is also the house of contracts. It's the house of open enemies. It's the house that's also connected to your audience and your marketplace. I also see this house as connected to divination, you know, how you see yourself or selves reflected in a tarot deck, you know, in a conversation with a one-to-one person, and or looking out your window and seeing elements of what you see reflecting action of you. Okay, that is the power of the seventh house that a lot of people do not always talk about. So you're having a culmination here. And so on the really mundane level, this can look like a relationship ending. And when I say ending, it's not ending finality, it's dead. But one aspect of it ending that may lead you to greater commitment, as you have Jupiter now in your sign, blowing you up. And of course, Cancer, the moon rules you, and the moon rules where the moon goes. So everywhere the moon goes, Cancer, you are stepping into a new bubble frequency of energetic material that you then reflect in your embodiment of how you show up in the world. That is the courtesy and the benefits of being ruled by the moon that moves every 2.5 days. And so this culmination, Cancer, is very significant to how you're going to also deepen your merging with others, as Saturn rules both your seventh house and your eighth house of deep merging and shared resources, as I mentioned. And the ruler of this full moon, Saturn, is now transiting the sign of Aries in your 10th house space. And so Saturn in the 10th house can be a little daunting. It requires you to step up and work harder. And in Aries, the harder work that you're being called to do is about how you know yourself, who you are. It's about taking your roles in society that much more seriously and ensuring that they are an authentic expression to you, the I am, right? And making sure that that I am is very intentional, as you'll also be navigating the dissolving of elements you thought you were yourself in ways that can be shockingly surprising when you see the manifestation of that before the world. You know, you don't get to just be by yourself and deal with it. No, the whole world gets to be there with you to see how you're doing, you know, in that 10th house space that very much connects to your relationships. As again, I mentioned, Saturn rules that space. And so this is really great because it can also stabilize and create some longevity and some legacy in terms of what you're creating in the world right now, Cancer. And so the culmination, the changes that are happening under this full moon are opening up the space for, I want to say, mobility that can be very much social, right? This 10th house is all about the social stuff with greater longevity, because there's more boundaries, there's more work that you're being called to do, that if you're able to endure, which I trust you will be, and set the term for long-term success in a whole new season of life, to be quite frank. And Jupiter, again, in your sign, exalts you, loves you up. And so you're looking good under this full moon as well. What else do I want to say? Yes, so Mars, the ruler of Aries, where Saturn now is, who is the ruler of this full moon, is in your third house. And so there's something being cut out. There's something being cut out precisely in the third house space. It could be connected to your neighbor, your neighborhood, also siblings, also your vehicle, transportation. And there's a huge element in these spaces around communication, and communication to have things be orderly, to make sense. Right? So a lot of organizing, precise planning, sometimes to the point where it can be too much. And so there's an ending in terms of how you have been navigating or had this space navigated that very much is connected to this full moon, that is clearing that third house space, clearing it out, seeing a full ending. That's also helping you to have an identity that is not only more benevolent, but one that is helping you to have a revitalization in terms of your sense of dharma and purpose in this life, as Jupiter rules that ninth house space where the nodes of the moon are, particularly the north node. And so the south node ending is supporting greater focus, greater momentum and energy in that ninth house space where you were thinking about your identity. And as Jupiter in transit is in the sign of Cancer in your first house, this is very much helping you to not only glow up more, but to ensure that what is growing up within your self-concept, within your identity, also on your body, is something that will be here for the long term, right? So that's what I have for you, dear Cancer. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. Leo, so this full moon is culminating in your sixth house space. And so this is a house of work, of day-to-day routine, of taking care of small animals. It's the house also of sickness and of crises. And sometimes it's connected to the house of enemies, so just people who show up and are messengers of crises, right? And Capricorn is a very structured, ruthless, and sometimes heavier energy, by which I mean it is not about a flash in the pan, in and out, type of momentum. No, it takes its time. The work that it does is so intentional and so curated over the long term that what is built to last, for better or worse. And so this culmination is a bit of a godsend because it can be like the ending of a project that has had so many moving parts that has been very heavy to carry and manage. It just required so much more of you. It's finally coming to an end. It could be literally the ending of a horrible boss, right? Because you did have Pluto in your sixth house space for almost 20 years. And so it could be the end of horrible work situations, horrible bosses, projects that have asked more from you than they have been giving you. Your flowers comes to end, okay? Culminate, you get to throw it away, okay? And it's benefic. It's a godsend. And of course, Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, is in your ninth house. And so Saturn in your ninth house is getting you serious about yourself, your worth. And when I say your worth in terms of your dharma, how that connects to how you know yourself to be your sacred I am. And because the ruler of Aries, where Saturn is in that sign of, is in your second house, yeah, baby, we're talking about your worth. We're talking about the way in which perhaps you traded your worth for service and look to how useful you are to others to determine your sense of worth, determine whether you get to survive. And so something is very much ending in that dynamic for you, where Mars in Virgo is also on that southmost space. And so what you are understanding and expanding to in terms of your dharma and the magic in life, the magic of the sacred I am as it relates you to God directly, and to experience that not just through your own individuation process, but your individuation process to a larger vision of your life in the world, very much intimately connected and merged, as the North Node, Jupiter, or North Node Pisces, is in the eighth house. And so this is deepening your ability to merge with more, merge with life, with others as reflections and conduits of this new world that you're taking more seriously, because you're taking yourself seriously in that ninth house space of your worldview, of higher mind, of law, and if not the law, legality, man's law, spiritual law. And so this may be seeing you having to get more serious about your spiritual practice, that again is allowing you to deepen your relationship with the things that you emerge with, right? And open up for deeper reception from others in very benefic ways. And so there's a lot of psychic energy that's being activated under this full moon, because Jupiter in the sign of Cancer now is in that 12th house space. And so you've been probably withdrawn a bit and like needing downtime, but also having a lot of sweet downtime as you are feeling more in tune with the sides of life that may have been more invisible, right? And so this is directly connected now to how you know your resources, that things that you possess, and what you are willing to invest in terms of what you're willing to spend your money on. Also, things that you're no longer willing to do to earn money. You're seeing an ending culminate very much is tied to day-to-day life, routine, work, and you putting out fires in that fifth house space. That is what I have for you, dear Leos. Sending you so much love and good luck. Virgo. So this full moon is happening for you in your, where is it happening? In your fifth house space. And so this is the area of your creativity, of your children, of your romantic partners, of your lover. It's also where you have your businesses take root. It's also your speculation, so any kind of gambling, any kind of games that you play, games of chance. And it's the house of good luck, essentially. And so there's a culmination here. So maybe there's an ending in one of there's an ending in the life of one of your children, something for them is coming to an end, or maybe there's an ending in a creative project you've been working really hard on. Maybe you find out that you conceived, Virgo, and if you have, good luck. And so there's an ending in one phase of your relationship with your romantic partner that now is opening the door for a very long enduring one. As Capricorn, as I mentioned before, for other signs, it is a very enduring energy. It goes slow. It does the heavy lifting. It definitely falls under the ideology of efforting, right? Whether it's efforting in spirit or efforting with hands on the ground. But that efforting is very much one to sow the seeds for what then is created is able to stand the test of time. And so that ending can very much be one that's opening greater space for this container for longevity related to that the creative aspects of your life. And of course, Saturn rules this full moon, and Saturn is now in your eighth house of shared resources with others. And so shared resources include emotional resources, financial resources, those that you receive and don't necessarily earn, but that are given to you. And this is usually like large sums of money. It's also deep merging. It's where we meet others and meet ourselves and others, and also take on others parts of ourselves in literal ways. And it's a house of inheritances. And as I mentioned, we don't always inherit just money. We inherit psychological dispositions as well. We may also, in this eighth house, be connected to a lot of themes around life and death, and also regeneration. And so Saturn here is stabilizing, potentially legacy money. But that first comes with you having to navigate any challenges that may be in the way between merging deeply with others and also receiving from others, as Saturn here can create boundaries between yourself and others. And this house is not a house of boundaries, it's the house of like being boundaryless. And so when we create boundaries in this house, sometimes it leads to us fighting others and seeing ghosts where they don't exist in others, but in fact are a part of ourselves that we're projecting onto others, which then amplifies the need to be away and have a hard time receiving. And so Saturn's gonna, bring up all that stuff while also helping to dissolve it, because we have Neptune also in that house. And so the work for you, dear Virgo, is to get really intentional about your ability to be responsible for what you are receiving and sharing with others, okay? To become more receptive to what you're able to receive. And when I say more receptive for what it is you're able to receive, to allow for the things you want to receive, while forgiving those perhaps you receive and not necessarily wanted to receive, to really allow yourself to be empowered by the process rather than shut down and victimized, as you've also had Chiron Aries in that house for many years now. And as Mars is the ruler of Aries, who deposits Saturn, it's in your sign. And so you're having the South Node on your side, in addition to Mars there, really helping you to sever and release and let go of an identity that no longer serves you, one that's deeply related to how you have been in the world in ways that have been largely unseen in the naked eye kind of way, but energetically have been very ripe with how you have been merging or been able to merge with others and others with you. And Mars also rules your third house of siblings, younger siblings, your neighbors, your cousins, your aunts, and your uncles, your nieces and your nephews. And so this is the area where there also may be some more realization of where you need to be responsible or where your challenges emerging and the woundedness have also yielded dynamics that may have been very challenging or deeply wounding to you because, you know, Scorpionic energy can also hold deep wounds. And Scorpio is the archetype aligned with that eighth house cycles of life, death, and generation. And so what is ending now in your identity, Virgo, is ending for good. It's being released. And it may sometimes feel really challenging because it's not always the things that we want to release that gets released, but things that we didn't realize were actually there are in the way or a problem that are also being released and being released for good. And the releasing of that is very much in harmony with this full moon's culmination at fifth house space to also open you up again, like I said, for perhaps greater luck or greater creative expansion. And therefore, greater creative expansion is truly the foundation of chi, of life force. That is what I have for you, dear Virgos. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. Libra, so this full moon is culminating for you in your fourth house space of the family, of your home, of your internal landscape, your internal resources. Also, this is the home related to ancestry as well. And so here, Libra, you probably have a hard time just doing nothing. You know, your earlier wiring is connected to being industrious, being productive, right? Needing to manage, have very structured inner world, inner life, inner makeup, home life, right? That's perhaps been your norm. And there's an ending there. On a really mundane level, this can look like perhaps you are changing homes. Perhaps there is a ending in family relationships in the way that it has been and will no longer be as you move past this time in your life. And remember, full moons culminate now, so you're feeling the energy 2 weeks prior and also 6 months after. Following Saturn, the ruler of this full moon is in your seventh house of one-to-one partnerships, of contracts, marketplace, your open enemies, also of your audiences, and just anyone that you're engaging with one-to-one. As I mentioned, seventh house also has a divination quality to it in terms of, you know, you doing tarot is a seventh house activity. You looking outside the window and seeing what you see is also a reflection of you, of the self, from the other. So those are seventh house activities. And so there is some seriousness that's happening in the seventh house. So maybe there's greater commitment to you being an authority in and of yourself, and also having to navigate and grapple with releasing people that maybe you've held hostage unknowingly, you know, in a particular aspect to stabilize your identity, Libra, as you know, you see yourself through the other. Hence, you have the archetype of the I am, who you are in that seventh house space of when you're with other people. And so, you know, Neptune dissolving here is making it happen, whether you like it or not. However, Saturn here is right there to stabilize your ability to resource inner authority while you're with other people, to really kind of reconfigure this Libra archetype and literally up-level you to be able to hold more of you with others in a way that doesn't have to depend on the other. Really kind of cool. And of course, you've had Chiron in that seventh house space. There's been a lot of wounding around partnerships. And again, this may speak to ways where others have been held hostage because of the dynamics have been very wounding. As Libra, you try really hard to be fair to others, like it's literally a part of your DNA. However, with Mars also ruling that second house, it means that when it comes to the things that you value, what you believe in, also what you have and you possess, you were probably unforgiving if people jeopardize that. And I'm with you. I get it. And so in this way, Mars now in Virgo on the South Node in your 12th house is waking you up to unconscious patterns, behaviors that undo you, that do not serve you. And so they're being cut out of your psyche under this full moon, as it's Mars is trining the full moon from that 12th house space to very much like give you a wink, like, yes, what is dissolving in terms of what you've inherited, also perhaps from your ancestry in that 12th house space, particularly if you are, a person of immigrants, and you are you live in a place where your forefathers did not, and you've inherited certain beliefs that come from this lineage and this ancestry of immigrants that is also being released under this full moon. And that very much has that theme of culmination of deep roots, a deep reckoning that is allowing you now to expand your container, Libra, for how you can show up in the world. It's like tilling the soil, essentially. And as the soil gets tilled, it means that what you now plant, of course, on the new moon in Leo, can expand even further, particularly now for the next year of Jupiter in that 10th house space, where it loves to be expanding how you're being received in. And of course, you are ruled by Venus, and Venus is now conjunct Uranus in the sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury, also now in the sign of Leo in that 11th house space. And so you can have radically huge surprises that allow you to travel and allow you to have a lot of luck related to Uranus themes and of course Venusian themes. So continuing the Venus-Uranus conjunction now in Gemini, lighting up not only your 5th house space, but also your 11th house space. So this can look like a lot of fortune, a lot of luck rushing to you at the time of the full moon and, following it. That is what I have for you, dear Libra. Sending you so much love and good luck. Scorpio. So this full moon is happening for you in your 3rd house of younger siblings, of your neighbors, of social media, of short distance travel. This is also the house related to your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your aunties, your nieces, and your nephews. It's also the house related to your vehicle. And of course, like correspondences, the DMs, it goes down the DMs, it still does, I don't know, but this is a culmination in that part of your life. And so you are also Mars ruled, and Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, is in the sign of Aries that is ruled by Mars, like you. And so there's a huge shift happening in your 6th house of day-to-day life, of how you deal with crisis, how you move through the world, your identity that is very much tied up in this full moon and what is ending. And of course, what is ending is also allowing you to have something new emerge. And of course, Mars in transit, your ruler, is in the sign of Virgo. So maybe you've been having some like disagreements with your friends or social groups, and you've been like having to let people know what it is and what it ain't. And it is my intention to let you know that the changes that you are actively making in that 11th house space related to your dreams and your hopes and who you call your friend and where you allow yourself to be associated is coming to an end. Not all of it, but some aspects that no longer serve you are being cut out. And under this full moon, it is very much supporting you to have a huge, big boom in terms of what goes that, again, frees you up in terms of how you're able to move in your community, where you call your friend and very much connected to your longer term hopes and dreams that very much supports you, Scorpio, in expanding your dharma, your sense of purpose in this life, and also giving you some luck in terms of travel, right? Perhaps stretching your horizons beyond the groups that you've been affiliated with, by choice, and also that perhaps to inherit it through where you were born, when you come from your earlier childhood, your cousins, your earlier networks, hence that 3rd house space that now is coming to a close and a culmination in terms of particular themes that you are now growing beyond. Also, Saturn is asking you to be very serious, Scorpio, because again, in the sign of Aries, Mars, you are Mars. And so you're having to take your health more serious. You're having to show up and demonstrate what seriousness looks like in terms of taking your health serious. That then allows you to have more quality routines and quality of life. And of course, this is going to be even more important as you're finding that things are dissolving despite your efforts. And so you may have to actually effort a little bit more in that 6th house space, which can be kind of daunting, particularly because you've had a lot of wounding there, perhaps like some health issues and things that have, really rubbed against your sense of worth as it relates to your body. And so now with this ending around friend groups, groups of belonging, perhaps a longer term hope and dream that's being cut out that no longer serves the vision of you that you are becoming and becoming with greater intention. You're also seeing some expansion happening for you in that big house space of joy of your heart, of authentic self-expression, when you actually get to be you and do things that truly serve your sense of pleasure and satisfaction. That is what I have for you, dear Scorpios. I send you so much love and good luck. Okay, Sagittarius. So this full moon in Capricorn is culminating in your second house of the income that you earn, of your resources, your values, yes, your assets. Also, this is connected to maybe even a diet. You had a really structured diet, and now, you lost all the weight, your blood pressure is down, and you get to just be more easy, allow more spaciousness in what you can consume and put into your mouth. And so Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, Sagittarius is in your fifth house. And again, the fifth house is your children, your romantic lovers. It's also your creativity. And I said lovers, like I know you have multiples. I don't know if you're multiples, but if you do, I'm not judging, but just your lover. I'll say that. The fifth house is also related to your gambling and your speculations. It's also the house of your joy. It's your good luck. And so Saturn now in this house is getting you to be more serious about what truly feels good for you, what truly stirs your heart. And also perhaps maybe your children are like getting bigger and they need more structured activities, and or you're called to have to be more of an authority to them. And so fun has to get more structured in the ways in which was never the case, because fun was a reflection of who you are authentically, Sagittarius. And now you're having to perhaps become more serious about how you engage fun while also being an authority or a voice of authority. Yeah, I am. Also, Neptune here is dissolving things. So there could be some boundaries that are shifting in terms of how you've known yourself to be previously that no longer are vibing, meshing, holding. And that can be kind of daunting. However, you've also had Chiron there, so there could have been some woundedness around your kids. Maybe you had kids and you had a vision for how your relationship with your kids had been, and then that wasn't it, and it just made you feel kind of like very wounded or not as viral or vital as you've known yourself, because again, Aries rules that fifth house space. But that's changing because you're getting a chance to firm up and to reorient to your sacred I am and be intentional about who you are as it relates to authentic self-expression that very much allows you to transform your relationship with your children, with your business enterprises, with your gambling, with whatever it is that you create as an expression authentically of you, to be more reflective of not only your heart's desire, but something that feels very sacred. And of course, Mars is in your 10th house, and Mars is on the South Node. So there's a whole shift happening for you, Sagittarius, in your outer world. And so your relationship status or maybe your career status is under reconstruction. And there's a huge shift that's happening with the South Node there, with Mars there, ruling again your fifth house in addition to your 12th house. There are some dreams and visions that no longer align with you and therefore how you're able to show up in the world. And so you're doing a lot of severing and releasing and cutting away of things that don't fit your narrative, Sagittarius. And of course, your Jupiter ruled, so Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer in your 8th house, expanding your ability to receive. And so even though there's an ending, perhaps an income source, an income stream, something that you're earning, it's okay, because there's an expansion of receiving more from others and deepening your relationship and your ability to connect with others that are largely nurturing and able to tend to your deeper needs with your home life and your inner world expanding. That very much serves your your I want to say like your it serves your ability to more authentically express, play, and discover more of who you are and who you want to be, and to also back that up and what is required of you as it relates to how you experience yourself, but also how you share that self with what you create from you being authentically yourself. That is what I have for you, dear Sagittarius. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. Capricorn, so this full moon is about you. There's something about you that is ending, a part of your identity, how you've known yourself in the world is ending, is culminating, right? And so perhaps you had an idea about yourself. You had to be this way. And under this full moon, you have a sudden aha moment. And that's no longer who you vibe with. It's not who you want to be. It's not who you are anymore. And you just like let that part of yourself go. And because Saturn, that rules this full moon, and who is your chart ruler, is in your fourth whole sign house in the sign of Aries, it's deeply connected to your ancestry, ideas about yourself that you inherited from your family, particularly your mother, that no longer are representations of you. And with Aries, the depositor of Saturn, therefore, this full moon, Mars, ruled by Mars, and Mars now in Virgo in your ninth house space, you're definitely letting go and cutting out beliefs that are not true to your sense of purpose, to your dharma, to your horizons that you seek to travel, and that you are also already on the journey of travel, right? And so this aligns with the South Node, emptying out that ninth house space. And when you think about the ninth house in the South Node, the ninth house is about how you understand God as we're called to relate to others. And of course, all houses related to the fire signs are about ego development. And so it says that there's a very real need for us to develop our ego expression as it relates to our purpose and why we are on the planet in the first place. We're all together, right? And so it's allowing for an emptying in this house that in fact creates more space for you to not exist on an island by yourself, but with others in a way that also is sacred. And this allows you to do that work that Saturn's calling you to do in that fourth house space, to be more intentional about how you do family as an authentic expression of your I am, right? While also having those boundaries very much dissolve within your family system. And so roles may look very different and may bring up a lot of clarity around the woundedness that you've been feeling in that fourth house space for many years now, with Chiron also in Aries moving through it. And so under this full moon, what is being brought up to your awareness is also being released. And in a way that I think for you, Capricorn, is going to give you a lot of them. As well, Venus is now in the sign of Gemini with Uranus in your sixth house space. And I mention it because Venus is a sign that is exalted by Saturn, and Saturn is your ruler. So this tells me that there might be new opportunities to move around or experience day-to-day life with more sweetness. There may be an opportunity for a new relationship that also develops just moving around day to day, right? That also very much can be connected to, how you're cutting out these beliefs, but also places that no longer align with you or that you identify with, to make more space for new ways to relate and therefore new ways to make connections. And Venus, again, being the planet of connections and relating relationships, particularly sweet ones that are about attractive and being magnetic, is allowing you to be so in your daily life. So there's more opportunity for you to connect. And Uranus means that wild things can happen out of the blue, as if like by the hand of God, right? And so electric, radical, sometimes upsetting, but with Venus there, it's more than likely more sweet than not. And of course, this is what I have for you, dear Capricorn. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. Aquarius. So this full moon in Capricorn is culminating for you in your 12th house of where you go to be by yourself, where you go to sleep. And when I say sleep, sometimes I mean like dream, meditate, or where you just go when you're not, immersed in the mundane world. It's the world beyond the veil. And sometimes we look at this as our deep psychological processing. And so you're having a culmination in this part of your chart. Perhaps you're letting go of some deep mental health challenges or stresses that have been wounding you in this area. And not that I was wounding you, but it may have been, right? As the woundedness has definitely been in the third house related to your siblings, your brothers and sisters, your aunts, your uncles, or just your community. Maybe people that you're around, grew up with, having a hard time. And as an Aquarius, so much of your sense of self is connected to your groups of association. And so definitely your childhood friends, always hold a place of like significance to your sense of who you really are, with Aries ruling that third house space. And so woundedness there in terms of perhaps having to grapple with, space between you, distances, and not being able to truly merge that, or feeling guilty because things have shifted for you. And so now with this culmination of Saturn, your chart ruler, who rules this full moon in that 12th house space, something is being let go of that just no longer serves you to hold, that you may have been holding privately, secretly, that has been also challenging. I don't know why I think it's challenging, but somehow I'm keeping it challenging. I don't know why, but I guess that's what it is. I'd like to have a different interpretation, because there's nothing inherently challenging about Capricorn, right? But something is challenging here. And again, Saturn, your chart ruler, is now in that third house space. You're getting to be more intentional, be more responsible, more boundary now as you navigate that third house space, navigate relationships with your siblings, your aunts and uncles, your cousins, your friends that feel like cousins from a different mother, or different ancestry. And to do so now while also seeing where there may have been illusions and the way in which they're dissolving despite our best efforts, and also having to still be that boundary around that and navigate that as you're individuating from, this place that holds significance in your life that very much is under reconstruction, and it's connected to your 8th house of how you perhaps extended resources in this space or had others extend resources to you. And so Mars is depositor of the full moon by way of being the sign of Aries, or being ruled by Aries, and Aries is the sign that Saturn is in now. And so Mars in Virgo is in your 8th house space. And so you're being asked to remove and cut away and release dependency on other people, whether energetically, emotionally, and or their financial resources, right? And that could be a whole institution. It could be like individuals that you're deeply merged with. It means that there's a need to move away from relying on them for what you need for yourself. And so this culmination of the moon in Capricorn, this 12th house space, is really showing the work that you've done to individuate on your own, right? But what that means in terms of your psychological stability. You had Pluto move through that space for almost a year, right? So you were under a lot of pressure to have to like deal with the ghosts in that back door, that back house, the 12th house. And so this culmination may be like, oh my gosh, you finally let that go. It's gone, and you're able to show up with more of an edge, an intensity that's very much speaks to you being free to authentically express yourself how you've always wanted to express yourself. You didn't have necessarily the resources on your own to feel comfortable to do so. And so what you do and how you show up now is expanding not only your sense of identity, in that first house where, again, Saturn rules, in addition to your 12, where moon is culminating, but also now in your 2nd house where you have the North Node. And so we're seeing the diminishment of your reliance on others for the things that you need, to now the expansion of you becoming magnetic and whole onto yourself and to receive them, right? And also align them with your income earning activities. And of course, just a deeper sense of what you're worth and your value that very much allows you still to be connected to all things without having to compromise your integrity and your vision of you to do that or to be that. And that is what I have for you, dear Aquarius. Sending you so much love and good luck. Of course, last but not least is Pisces. Pisces, this full moon is culminating for you in your 11th house of your friends, of your social networks, of your groups that you belong to, your hobbies, your long-term hopes and your dreams. And so maybe you're just having a culmination. You're having your dream come to life. It's finally happened. This thing that you've always wanted to happen has happened. It's happening, right? And as it happens, over, right? And where you step into a new phase of this dream and imagining it with things aligned with it, or maybe it just birthed a new dream that this one has now come and you no longer need to dream it, right? And of course, Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, is in your second house of your resources, things that you earn, the things you put in your mouth, your sense of value, how you're able to magnetize resources, the thing that you need to you, right? This is also the house of your survival. And of course, you have the sacred Aries archetype of I am. And so your identity, and with Saturn here, you're being asked to do more work, get more serious about how you earn income, how you meet your survival needs, and how that is directly connected to how you understand your identity and your self, and how that self is, either potent and very much connected to the universe and worthy of receiving, and or perhaps may have had programs or ideas of lack, as you've also had Chiron in Aries in that second house space, bringing up a lot of woundedness around how you have received, right? Maybe you have to shrink yourself and make yourself smaller to receive, or maybe you have to fight so hard just to like take up space, and in fact magnetize yourself to receive the things that you need to survive. And so there's been a lot of awareness around these themes, and now you're being asked to do the work to heal it, and not only heal it, but to create authority around your resources, around your second house material, around who you are and why you are worth it to take up space, to align with the things that you need to survive and that you want, that align with who you know yourself to be and are becoming. And of course, Neptune here is going to give you a bit of push-pull energy in terms of things will dissolve that you don't want to dissolve, but nevertheless will dissolve. And also too, as your ships may seemingly wash and go out one day, they also may come in the next. And of course, with Neptune, it's never like black and white or clear, but I will say that you will see direct connections to your sense of I am, as it is allowed to be, not necessarily within your grip, but also charged and empowered by more than you. So the trick here for you, dear Pisces, is finding the balance, that sweet spot between being self-directed and also surrender, because you so deeply trust and are that self already. And of course, the depositor, the ruler of Aries, is Mars, and Mars in your second house. And so a lot of the tests or material that your sacred I am, and this dance, I said, of push and pull between what is dissolving and what is coming in based on how much you are and stepping to the energy of what you say you are, is tested in that seventh house space. So this is directly showing you that you are cutting out, releasing things that no longer serve you as it relates to your one-to-one partnerships, your committed partner, even open enemies, your audience, your marketplace, people that you are in relationship to, people that you provide services to. And so you're getting really boundary because you're releasing, a phase or dynamics in these partners and partnerships that no longer serve you in terms of who you're becoming. And so in this way, you may see relationships end, and blessedly so. And also you see relationships expand, or the container for the relationship expand to include more of you, perhaps related to before. And this is directly tied to now deepening and expanding your deep sense of self-worth in and of yourself, and also as an important part of the universal framework. And so Jupiter, your ruler, is now in Cancer in your fifth house. It's expanding your joy. And of course, we know when you're able to be yourself and feel more of yourself, you're more able to enjoy yourself. And therefore, as you enjoy yourself, you create more from that self, whether it's actual babies, you have a more lovemaking, right? Maybe you're able to go deeper with your romantic partners in terms of creativity and creative expression. Or maybe you're just able to be more immersed in all the things that you created already. And this allows you to have greater luck and just greater joy and pleasure in the house of fortune and good luck, which is your fifth house. And so maybe you're having more time to be with your kids and your kids are growing in a particular milestone that just is so delicious for you, right? And there's just more luck here. And maybe you're just having way more kids too. Or maybe you're also expanding your home as the fifth house is not just about your home, but because you have Cancer here, it may speak to maybe you're creating so much more that you're also creating containers for your creations that are extensions therefore of your creativity. All that and more. That is what I have for you, dear Pisces. I'm sending you so much love and good luck. All right, so that is what I have for you for this beautiful full moon on July the 10th, 2025. I want you to let me know what you think and how this moon is impacting you. What is standing out for you as this full moon comes to completion? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have not already, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to always stay up to date with my content. Thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to connecting with you all soon. Sending you so much love. Happy full moon.